The free agent running back class in 2024 is going to be one of the best of all time in the NFL. Will the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb situation have interest? We'll talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you guys are bananas, and I love you to death. I just suggest that more you join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Obviously, Combine Week. We're going to talk here in segment 2. Andrew Berry met with the media today in Indianapolis. Segment 3, we're going to talk a little bit of offensive tackle classes. We're going to see the big boys work out Thursday, starting to get the workouts going here. Obviously, things will start to pick up a little bit more on Wednesday at the NFL Combine. But I think this is just one here, obviously, to talk about. We've talked about some draft running backs here in the recent weeks. We certainly talked about draft running backs in a bonus episode. We're going to get a couple more of those out for you guys. I appreciate the feedback. Obviously, a lot of people, sending messages. Appreciate it. It's a busy week. And look, folks here at Locked On, they pay us well. So if that means we're going to do some extra content to keep all you great listeners satisfied, that's what we're going to do. But you look at the free agent running back class here for 2024. We're just going to rattle off some names. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, obviously an injury history there, but once a bright name. Antonio Gibson, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, A.J. Dillon, Dante Freeman, just to name a few. Now, an analytic franchise, obviously, we've talked about this many, many times. The everydayers know paying running backs is not something that they normally are into. Paying linebackers is not something they are normally into. But you have to, and even when you look at things through an analytic mind, there has to be something that essentially breaks the analytics. Nick Chubb, certainly something that broke the analytics. Most likely, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is something that will break the analytics. Now, with the difficult situation with Nick Chubb, and, look, I will stand here and I will say to everyone, if you think he is going to be a week 1 player, you are being foolish. Odell Beckham Jr. in 2021 practiced almost all of training camp, practiced almost every day, and the Browns still held him out for the first 2 weeks, and he was only coming off of 1 knee surgery. Nick is coming off 2. I don't think we see Nick in September. I'm not sure we see Nick in October. I think you see Nick Chubb as a back 9 player for the Browns in 2024. Does that mean, do they feel comfortable trusting the room with Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, and a draft choice? Or do they go out and with these running backs, most of these guys are likely looking at 1-year deals. It's the way it's going to work. Age is not a big factor that's positive for any of these guys in the situations they're in. Saquon Barkley, and there's a lot of ways this could go. Would the Ravens have interest? And I'm so tired of people, so-and-so and Lamar Jackson would be a great combination. No, Lamar Jackson is a great solo act. He doesn't need a second act. If he has a second act, the second act has always been Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson, whatever. He doesn't need the help. You can pair whoever you want with Lamar Jackson. It's always going to be the Lamar Jackson show because that's how good Lamar Jackson is. Josh Jacobs, the rumors are the Raiders are trying to bring him back. But if Josh Jacobs is free, what are you going back to if you're Josh Jacobs? What are you going back to with the Raiders? What are you going back to? And of all these names on this list, I think Josh Jacobs is the one guy you could probably cash in for 1 year, 2 year. I'm saying more than 1 year deal. Derrick Henry, I don't know where he's going to go. I just pray it's not the AFC North. Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler's a ridiculously good back. He's really, really proven, accomplished guy as a runner, as a receiver. Where does his future lie? As the Chargers look like they're going to move on from him, of course. Tony Pollard is a guy I kind of do like for the Browns. I just like the things that he can really bring athletically. Really, really good receiver, kind of runs almost the entire route tree, fantastic on the wheel routes, and there's just not a guy, a safety, a linebacker that can cover him in those situations. DeAndre Swift certainly seems like a name that would fit here. Age is something certainly that I think would appeal to the Cleveland Browns. If you all remember when he was a Detroit Lion, Browns won that game, but DeAndre Swift had a really, really big touchdown run for the Lions that day. I would be okay, but DeAndre Swift at his age, is it possible that he's going to get more than a 1 year deal? Something certainly he's looking for. J.K. Dobbins, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't. But the problem is the same issues you're having with Nick Chubb are the same issues you would be looking at with a player like J.K. Dobbins as he's coming off an Achilles injury after coming off of an ACL injury. Certainly some things to think about there. Now, Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, I've talked about this a ton. They both have a connection. They both have familiarity with new Browns offense coordinator Ken Dorsey. Both played for Ken in Buffalo. Devin Singletary played really, really well for the Houston Texans this last year. I'm not sure that the Texans are ready to let that relationship end. Zach Moss, the appeal with a guy like Zach Moss is he played in a really difficult running back room situation last year with the Indianapolis Colts. Jonathan Taylor obviously, missed time to start the season, then came in and Moss's touches kind of decreased. Then Taylor was injured and they went back to Moss again, had a touchdown in the touchdown against Pittsburgh Steelers late in the season, played well, ran well. When they were, they ran well against Houston Texans in the season finale, obviously a game they ultimately lost and, ended up giving the AFC South crown to the Houston Texans. But you look at this and there is a possibility, where the Browns say, hey, maybe we'll cut a check here and maybe we will, try to get this insurance and this coverage. I think money should be spent wisely at other places. A lot of people harping about the wide receiver room. Personally, that is where I would put the money. I think Jerome Ford and I think a rookie running back and Pierre Strong, they can navigate probably that first half of the season for you. But with a running back class in free agency like this is kind of a coup for the Browns. It's a really difficult situation that they are in. They will have the money to spend if they choose. So if a Tony Pollard tickles their fancy, a DeAndre Swift tickles their fancy, or getting Ken Dorsey a familiar piece in Devin Singletary or Zach Moss, it's certainly something you're going to do to try to, make the first couple weeks, months for your new offense coordinator work. We're going to continue here, your latest Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Could you imagine what you could do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you use it for personal gain, getting more chores done, getting more work done? Would you be a little selfish? Would you read a book, go for that jog you always talk about? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze the special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. I've got a lot of balls in the air, looking after my mom, taking care of my wife, taking care of my daughters, taking care of the household while everybody else does their thing. Me, it would probably just be to take an hour for myself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. YouTube.com/LockedOn. Continuing on, your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. As always, appreciate you all for making me your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, if you are not part of it by now, get on the bus, Gus, and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Andrew Berry in Indianapolis did his GM presser Wednesday. We will get to hear from Coach Kevin Stefanski. And just some things that I want to highlight, obviously, some simple things. The Cleveland Browns are going to return to the Greenbrier in West Virginia. Look, when you had a year like you did last year, you try to want to replicate things. You know what I'm saying? Like you have a really, really good day one day. You know what? All right, well, I took my shower in the morning as opposed to taking it at night. I'm going to take my shower tomorrow morning. You know what? I had oatmeal for breakfast. I'm going to have oatmeal for breakfast again. Something goes well for you. You don't maybe want to disturb the routine. So you know what? Fired up. Let's go. Another trip down to West Virginia. Country roads take me home. The Cleveland Browns going back to Greenbrier. A little getaway for everybody. Try to get everybody on the same page before you begin a grueling, which for the Cleveland Browns hopes to be a 6.5 month long tenure, going from the beginning of training camp to going to hopefully playing deep, possibly into February of 2025. Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings will be one of the preseason opponents for the Cleveland Browns this year. The Vikings and team will come to Berea, which makes you think, obviously, there's going to be a home preseason game against the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, the relationship between Andrew Berry, general manager over in Minnesota, Kwesi, obviously, those things are still pretty tight. Two guys who enjoy each other, have always looked out for each other, and trying to set it up here. It will be tough. We'll miss how the Philadelphia Eagles won every training camp rep and drilled or was blah 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 blah. But Browns Vikings will be a summer dalliance in Berea this year. Andrew Berry spoke about the trade deadline and how the Cleveland Browns, basically filed in to have the trade deadline pushed back. And Andrew spoke very eloquently on this. And there's one point I'm going to get to that Andrew maybe necessarily did not. Andrew talked about, obviously, the length of the season. First off, the trade deadline has always been the same. Now you went to an 18-week regular season. So therefore, obviously, the logic would be, well, why not push it back a week? Then basically pushing one step further, knowing the NBA and the NFL and how much they love their money, there is talk, obviously. And, the NFL is trying to find a way to hopefully sneak it in and get the Players Association to agree. They would like an 18th regular season game in the NFL. It's crazy to think. I think it's too much. It's way too much taxing on players' bodies. We have players burning out of the league way too fast as it is. But the NFL is always about the goddamn dollar, and that's not going to change. And look, it's just the way it is. Money makes the world go round. NFL doesn't necessarily need it, but they're certainly exploring it and trying to find a way to make this all work. So there would maybe get your 2-week, obviously, push back as far as the trade deadline. Andrew Berry brought up, the percentage of games played, the NBA, the NHL, MAB, and as to where their trade deadlines are based versus the NFL. The NFL's trade deadline right now is based after a 45% completion of the schedule. Other sports are well past 50. Some sports are well past 60 before they are, finally finalizing rosters and no more trading between teams. The other thing that Andrew Berry, if he got to it, I apologize, but one that I would add to Andrew Berry's stance about pushing the deadline back is once you went to a third wild card team. So now 3 wild card teams in the NFC, 3 wild card teams in the AFC. Another reason to push back the trade deadline. You have a lot more teams now who may remain relevant longer with the 3 wild cards. So therefore, that is another reason to push it back. You have more teams in the mix later in the season. And God forbid a player went down, or God forbid, a team said, you know what? We didn't look so great, but we look really good right now. And you know what? 2 weeks ago, our general manager wasn't going to make this poll. Our owner wasn't going to sign off on it. But you know what? We went out, we won 2 division games 2 weeks in a row, and our general manager and our owner, they're in. So they're going to let us make this late move that we think will just raise us over the top. Something to consider. But Andrew Berry brings up a great point about moving the NFL trade deadline back. And obviously, with any folks who were Ivy League educated, you just don't make a point. You make a point and you support your point with facts. Andrew Berry did a fantastic job of that today. We got to hear from Andrew, obviously talking about Nick Chubb. And some of these questions, they just seem so silly at the time. You have him there, and where would you like to improve your roster? These types of questions I don't like in this type of setting. Look, they don't know any more about Nick Chubb right now than they knew when they had the goodbye, walking out the door press conference. We're not going to know any more about Nick Chubb till July, heck, maybe even August. What we do know is that Nick Chubb is going to work his butt off. Nick Chubb is going to do everything he can to get back to this team as fast as he possibly can. But it is a mountain to climb. It is 2 knee surgeries to get over. It's got to make sure everything within that knee is working in unison, that he can go max effort. And that's got to happen in, obviously just workouts and, some physical therapy drills before there's even a possible random thought of him stepping onto a football field and doing that work, let alone getting to the point where he is ready for people to actually try to take him to the ground. It's a crazy, thing to have to deal with, and it all hurts because we all appreciate Nick, and we know how much Nick loves this team, loves this city. We know how Nick carries himself as a professional, and you never want to see one of your favorites have to go through something like this, let alone again like he did at the University of Georgia. But you know what? Some guys just don't have the mental makeup. Some guys just don't have the intestinal fortitude to get through situations like this, and it's probably the fact that Nick Chubb has been through something similar like this already once in his life, in his career, that is allowing him to focus on this now. Nick Chubb is a baller. We have not heard the last of Nick Chubb in a Cleveland Browns uniform. We have not heard the last of Nick Chubb lighting up Cleveland Browns Stadium. It's just going to be a while. But when he comes back, it's going to be as hot as it always was. The offensive tackle position, Andrew Berry spoke on that, of course. All 3 slated to be ready to go for the regular season. I honestly believe that all 3 should be ready to go sooner than that. Jack obviously was the first one down week 1. With Jedrick Wills, it's kind of hard to figure out because he was playing the whole, can I get back without having to do the surgery? Do the surgery after the season. And God bless Jedrick Wills for that. But it just never came to fruition for him. DeJuan, obviously, same thing type of thing. It just went, and then it got a little bit worse. But the Browns are going to have, 2 strong offensive tackles. The question is what 2 are going to be the starters. So that is certainly a big question to have for the Cleveland Browns as far as that is concerned. But, that stuff will work itself out. I do believe somebody will be leaving the buildings in Berea as far as, getting moved on from. And there's one guy who's making the most money and, no contract after this year. So you kind of have an idea where I think that is going to play out. We're going to continue on here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Of course, as always, I appreciate all of you for making Locked On Browns, your pit stop here, getting your time in with me. Don't stick around. We're going to start closing it out here. Segment 3 coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Closing out here, your latest Locked On Browns. And of course, as you guys all know, I appreciate every single one of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you are my people. And I want more people to join our people. So make sure Any new listeners, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Bunch of content up already this week. A couple of bonus episodes on the wide receiver position, the running back position, all going into Indy this week. We're going to get you some more of those ahead of the workouts this week. I love NFL Combine Week. I love the NFL Draft. My people, my everydayers, you guys know this. This is my time to shine. We're going to talk a little about the offensive tackle class. And now, look, it is time, and DeJuan Jones will be a big part of this. It is time for the Browns to start looking for the future of this room. Obviously, a new offensive line coach. You're going to try to get him some pieces for him to start to make his guys. Dickerson, this is what he is going to be doing. You're not just going to say, here's your 5, here's your guys. You're going to bring in some guys and let Andy Dickerson start to make this room his own. Now, I want to give you guys just the sheer numbers, sheer numbers of offensive tackles in this class. Joe Alt, I believe, best in show out of Notre Dame. Cleveland Browns aren't going to sniff him, and that's fine. Olamiwaya Fashanu from Penn State. Cleveland Browns are not going to sniff him. J.C. Latham, number 3 already. Now, this is somebody's top-ranked offensive tackles. I'm just going to let you know where they fall in his overall board. So that's 3 right there. Fuaga, Oregon State, absolute beast. And again, Cleveland Browns aren't going to sniff him. Mims out of Georgia. Athletic freak. If he works out this week, keep your eyes on Amarius Mims out of Georgia. He is a big boy, and he moves well. That's 5 right there. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, number 6. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma had a fantastic Senior Bowl week. Pete Smith was down there. He was one of the guys that, Pete kept coming back to me. He's like, look, everybody's here for some other guys, but Guyton is really putting together a really nice week for himself. Fatuanu out of, that'd be 7, by the way, out of University of Washington. A lot of people think that maybe he goes inside. It's always about arm length, and it gets very ticky-tacky. But I think he will be somebody that will be drafted with the thought process of saying, hey, can he play outside? If not, I know I've got a guard with mean demeanor and should help me there. Kingsley Sumataya, BYU, 8, by the way. Now we're up to 8. Really, really good player, ascending player. I think he's a player that's really, really going to be able to help this team, help whatever franchise he goes to. I have no idea what the hell that was. So interesting there. Then you have Jordan Morgan, had a nice year for Arizona coming off an ACL injury. Patrick Paul, we're up to 10 offensive tackles now. From Yale, Pete talked about this kid the other day. Ahmed Jigade, I'm still going to have to work on that one. Raw, obviously. A lot of room to be work with. Probably ranked higher than he should be. Blake Fisher, this is the guy Pete was talking about the other night from Notre Dame. Physical, young, 20 years old. And best football is probably in front of him as he's going to get to the NFL. Probably he's not going to be a day one starter, but we have a guy who starts in the NFL for a long, long time. Delmar Glaze, this is another guy that Pete talked about, really, really solid offensive tackle. Roger Rosengarter out of Washington, 2 Washington tackles in this draft, 2 Notre Dame tackles in this draft. From Utah, Lomea, Pittsburgh, Matt Goncalves, Missouri, Javon Foster, Michigan, Ladarius Henderson, Christian Jones out of Texas. That is about 17 tackles right there in the top 175. 175. That is a lot of offensive tackles. Cleveland Browns are looking to get that room younger and eventually cheaper down the road. This is a year they can do that. You can keep James Hudson around. He ain't making no money, obviously. He would be tackle 3 after you make that possible move that I think we all think is going to come. You have the rookie. We're going to see how Dickerson works here, how he develops offensive linemen. But there's a lot going on here for this Cleveland Browns team in this draft. Yes, no first-round pick, and we'll get to that hopefully back in 2025. But there's still a way for the Browns to make noise. They need wide receivers. This draft is deep in wide receivers. They need running backs. There's a good group of running backs, and they're not going to go that high. Fits the Cleveland Browns well. Offensive tackles, you want one? You can get one. So the Browns create another draft choice by moving possibly a corner. Linebackers, there's some guys that'll fit the bill here. It's shaping up to be a pretty good draft class here. We're going to follow as this week goes on here. Obviously, all the workouts. This is always one of my favorite weeks of the NFL season. I truly enjoy the process. I enjoy watching these guys compete, going out there trying to fulfill their dream, going from a scholarship player to hey, now I want to make sure I can take care of my parents for the rest of their lives. I want to take care of my siblings for the rest of their lives. The NFL Combine, for me, a lot of people maybe don't view it as a major sporting event. For me, it is. Being a guy who played the game for so long, getting to see players, certainly with a hell of a lot more talent than I ever had, get to that chance where they are starting to now realize that they are going to be Sunday players. They are going to be part of Monday Night Football. They're going to be part of Thursday Night Football. Hell, might be part of a Super Bowl one day. This week for me is always a special week to watch these guys just go from, where they want to, peewees, all that stuff, and just work their way up and worked their butt off. And now it all starts to come to fruition. The NFL Combine for me is always one of my favorite viewing experiences of the year. So we're going to have a big week. We've already had a big week. We're going to continue with Combine coverage. We're going to continue giving you some individual episodes here, just focusing on just some position-specific fits for the Browns. I am Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Sorry, I got caught up in a minute. I love the Combine. You guys can tell that, I'm sure. The everyday crowd, I need more of you. The everyday crowd, we're a welcoming bunch. We're kind where we say, hey, the beer's in the fridge. There's chips on the counter. Come be more like the everyday or subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.